Hello, everybody. It's amazing to be here with these people that I love so much. It's really an honor, and I thank you, Paula, for having the idea, and all of you for accepting to share your knowledge and your heart with us today. So this table is about how we keep things, how we keep what's so important, and in the digital format, humans have been creating art for millennia. Materials, techniques, and medias are so numerous, like bioart, immersive interactive installations, net art, virtual reality, robotics, machine learning are some of the examples of the outputs that we have seen and experienced in the last 5 decades. To make this production wired to a large audience and preserve it for future generations, efforts are made by a series of ecosystems that incorporate artists, programmers, cultural institutions, curators, collectors, and many others. First file archive online meeting, hybrid archives examples. It starts with amazing guests. Christina Radner, the project manager of Ars Electronica. Manuela, professor, curator, artist, and working with Ars Electronica export-import for more than 18 years. The senior digital and media art conservator at ZKM, Morgane Stricot, and Oliver Grau and Wendy Coones that should join us soon. These people, like Christina and Manuela, will tell us stories and projects of Ars Electronica archives. Morgane will review how ZKM, which is famous for collecting this kind of art, technical and restoration teams are committed to preserve the collection and generate new ways of thinking posterity. And Oliver, which is like an iconic person in the field, will landscape strategies for museum network digital arts, including ADA, a very important project for all of us artists and people involved in the field. So how do you keep, how does your institution select, curate, collect, and preserve digital content? I want to invite Manuela and Chris to start this talking with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rejane, for this introduction, and also for giving us the chance to speak here about Ars Electronica Archive. I want to mention here that what I will present here, and so Christina and me, here's the first slide, are presenting Ars Electronica Archive. Christina is the main head of Ars Electronica Archive, and I was working for Ars Electronica since last year, actually 2020. And since October, I'm a full professor at the Art University here in Linz, but nevertheless in constant contact with Ars Electronica. And of course, I also have to tell, so I'm actually part of this because also the ways I'm working with artists at Ars Electronica, with also my students here now at the Art University, I actually know that the value, like an archive that Ars Electronica actually have, is of big importance for young students here at the Art University, but also for artists that I was working with at Ars Electronica. And this is why it's really an important thing for me to contribute also here from, maybe now here a little bit from the students' view or from an artistic view on working with the archive. So what I will start is more a historical overview, and Christina will then go deeply into how the archive actually works, and I will conclude then with some kind of artistic projects that came out by working with the archive of Ars Electronica. What is always very important here to mention is, of course, the long history of Ars Electronica, and of course that an archive of Ars Electronica can profit a lot from these actions, from these activities that actually Ars Electronica was doing. The Ars Electronica Festival is actually was initiated in 1979, and you have to imagine, I always say that the first computer, the personal computer, actually came in the 80s, and I don't know how many people really had in the beginning of the 80s already had the chance to have a personal computer. But in 1979, Ars Electronica Festival started, and of course you have to see also the works that are now that you can find in the archive always related to the time. And I think this is one of the very important things also that an archive like Ars Electronica actually can contribute is always the context of the time when these works have been created. And this is why Ars Electronica is actually, we're not speaking about a collection here. So Ars Electronica is not collecting artworks. Ars Electronica is collecting documentations of works, and also documentations about the time, when, in which time the artists are working with which kind of materials, which kind of technology. And I think this is the most important feature when it comes to the Ars Electronica archive. So in 1979, when we speak about the first contributions of the festival, there you see that a lot of artists actually using equipment that is actually not like that is not an equipment that is easily to find. So it's mostly related to universities. It's mostly related to well-equipped entities that actually could have the possibility actually to work with this technology. Then in the 80s, when the pre-Ars Electronica started, you could see that more and more artists that are working at the university had access to these kind of technologies, but also the personal computer came. And then also, of course, I mean, the camera systems already are imported back, and this is back to the 70s. So, okay, this is then contributed a lot than what actually has been done in the 80s. In the 90s, then internet came. You could also see the influence of internet then into the pre-Ars Electronica. And in the 1996, I want to mention here that Ars Electronica Future Lab and having our own research and development, actually Linz, of course, had also a big contribution on moving especially artists and artistic processes in the context of Linz, in the context of Austria, and in the production of works that actually started very early here, and that you could see now with a lot of divisions here, for example, at the art universities, but also at the University of Applied Sciences here at Hagenberg, and different universities that actually focusing now on art and technology. Yeah, so very important is also the Ars Electronica Center, because a lot of the works that are very well documented, and also the works that have a different status of development, and all the works that we have, or a lot of the works that we have in our archive, of course, have different stages of developments. And this is also an Ars Electronica Center, which is our museum that can actually exhibit the works, for example, as they have been exhibited in the 80s, but as they developed then also during the 90s. So there's a lot that has been researched on. For example, also we had the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute, then in the beginning of the new millennium that we were working together here in Linz. And that was researching a lot, Katja Kwastek, for example, on interactive art and how interactive art actually evolved, how it can be categorized, how it can be actually named, and categorizing and tagging actually works is, of course, very important when we speak about archives. So this is also why all these different time slots here, or special occasions that we see, when we think about it, have actually a big influence also on how the archive developed, how it has been extended, and so on. When we speak about the diversity of the works and the processes, so even the processes that have been documented and are then they have a place in the archive too. Of course, they're totally diverse. Yeah, if you see Professor Ishiguro and his Android here sitting, this has been a research project that took place in the coffee upstairs at Ars Electronica. Also, these go into our archive. Events from the festival go into the archive. Ars Electronica Export, I was heading for 18 years. All these activities worldwide, of course, all the artists that contributed to Ars Electronica Export went into our archive. The production that have been done at the Ars Electronica Future Lab, what you, for example, one of the activities that you see on the left side below this ABC project, which was a participatory project initiated for the SoundCloud, for Klangwolke, at Ars Electronica, where people could actually build the letters and where they could write in the public with letters, has been a research project from Ars Electronica Future Lab. And all these different stages out of this process of participatory processes went into the archive. So you can imagine how difficult, especially when we speak about participatory art and participatory processes, how difficult it is actually to document it. Maybe the documentation is even easier, but then actually to contextualize this, to bring it into a frame, to tell the story of actually what happened, or even when it has been restaged, what happened then on a second level. This is now why I actually want to give now the stage to Christina Radner, who is actually the head of the Ars Electronica archive and who can give us now facts and figures about the archive. Christina, please.
Yeah, hello, also from my side. I will go a bit more into detail about working in the Ars Electronica archive or work with it. The development of the archive as it exists now started in 2008. And there are basically three connected parts. The first one is the physical archive, where you also see a photo on this slide. The storage rooms with all the data carriers in it. The second one is the database, kind of the heart of the Ars Electronica archive, where all the digitized materials from the physical archive came into or come into, and also more digital files. And the second part is the online archive that's public and accessible for everybody online. I will say a few words to all of these three parts. The first one is the physical archive. You see here basically what it contains, like all the publications of Ars Electronica and a lot of data carriers with audio and video material, photo boxes with slides and photos. On the upper right, you see the pre-boxes for the pre-Ars Electronica that Manu already mentioned. It started in 1987, and at the beginning, all the material came physically to us via post. So not like now in a digital database. So it was really sent and it's stored in these boxes. And yeah, the rooms have climate and humidity control, and they are located in the new center building that was built in 2009. Yes, the next slide, please. A few words to the content. Again, Manu already mentioned a few things. So it's basically documentation material that we have in the archive from all different departments of Ars Electronica. The oldest media formats that we have are from the ORF. It's the Austrian Broadcasting Company. And it was lucky for us that the ORF was a co-organizer of the festival. So there is really good quality material since the start of Ars Electronica with the festival in 1979. Yes, that's maybe back again, sorry. there is a lot of material about the pre-Ars Electronica, as I already said, and the numbers that you see on this slide are already referring to the database. If I take the videos, for example, there are several thousand videos already in our database in digital form, and when you watch them, you will watch 172 days non-stop. So a lot of content is already in. Yes, next slide, please. Here is an example what you can find in the archive to make it a bit more clear maybe. I took Jeffrey Shaw as an example. When you search for him, you will find a pre-submission because he won a prize in pre-Ars Electronica, and in this submission there is background information about the project with which he won, so project texts and maybe also really detailed information about things that are in the back of the project, personal details, and of course for the CyberArts catalog, proofreaded project texts and pictures with credits. He visited the festival also, so there is an interview with him that was taken during this festival time, and he also made a talk at the festival in the pre-forum. And a few years later, he exhibited the piece in an exhibition, and there they also took a video with him where he explained his installation. So he is talking about his installation while this piece is in action, kind of interactive. And press pictures. The next is the database that I will tell you a few things about. It's basically the heart of the archive, and the development started parallel to the physical archive, so already in 2008, and it was programmed by people from Ars Electronica. You have, like you see here, different options, possibilities to search, and there are also different users possible, kind of like what you are allowed to see or do. And the connection to the physical archive is the signature. So you see it here on the bottom, this X and number and year. It's like the signature that also is in the physical archive, for example, for a video on this video data carrier. That's the connection. The metadata form is the one that you will see if you are the person that is adding something to this database. So you have to fill out a lot of things when you upload a video or a picture to it. The next slide. This is the show mode that you see when you are researching in this intern database. It's you also have a lot of information here, but you cannot change anything in this mode. There are different tabs where you get information. You can see or watch the video. You can download it in different versions. And for us as Electronica team, it's important that there is an on-off button. That's one way to bring something from the intern database to the online archive, just by clicking, and then it will be updated. Yeah, we can skip this one and go to the next. Here you also see an example for the connection. On the right side, the physical archive and the photo boxes there, and on the left side, like one of these boxes looks like in the intern database, where you have all the pictures collected, and when you click on one picture, you will get more information about this picture. The next slide. The online archive, that's something you can access even if you are not at Ars Electronica and get the access from us. So that's public for all. You see the link on the bottom right, archive@aec.at. You basically can explore by yourself. There are a lot of things already in there, and it's still growing. And I will give back to Manuela for the last part of our presentation.
Yeah, this part is more about how to restage, how to use the artist or use the archive actually for the artist to restage their works or to work with information that they actually find in the archive. This is, for example, Waltraud Cooper. With the Klangmikado, Waltraud Cooper had an exhibition at the Landesgalerie here in Austria, and she restaged actually her installation that was exhibited in 1987, and she exhibited it again at the Landesgalerie. So using the documentation material that Ars Electronica had actually in the archive for her own installation, but also including archive material in her exhibition space. The same here also at the Museum der Moderne in Salzburg, and we have been contacted about an exhibition that took place about Charlotte Moorman and the avant-garde. That took place in 1979. So the museum came to us and said, well, what do you have in the archive about the project that she did with Namjoon Paik, the project that she did in Linz and so on? Could there be an archive material that could be actually also made available for our audiences in the museum? And this is also where we, of course, collaborate and contribute a lot into exhibitions that are taking place, but also young artists like here from Interface Cultures in Linz. At the Art University, Martin Nadal is a very young artist. He was just interested into making an algorithmic search and working with the archive. And what you can do is actually when you go to the Ars Explorer, which is a project by him, which is connected with the official surface, of the official layer of the Ars Electronica archive, you can actually browse through artworks related to different categories and different tags that he actually scrapped or actually took from the Ars Electronica archive, and that he actually combined in order to make this wonderful and very nice visualization project. So whenever you find or you want to search a project that uses water, you can just type in water, and then, for example, all these water projects are then related to each other in a very, very nice graphic. But also recently in 2017, not so recently, but in 2017, Refik Anadol participated as the Ars Electronica Festival, and he was also working with the Ars Electronica archive and doing an augmented reality and virtual reality exhibition with working our archive material. And in the moment, Mariano Sardon, a very important Argentinian artist, is actually working together with our archive. So there's a lot of artists who are using the material on the one hand because they by themselves contributed or their works are in the archive, and they actually need this information back and are working with this information, or artists are working with information that are there for others, or even the question of how to present, how to restage, how to rethink information that is in the archive. And here's a project, a very nice interface project from Interface Cultures at Ars Electronica at the Kunstuniversität, which just shows that archives could also be rethought in another way. So it's also interesting how archives could be presented. And this is, for example, a book that you are like a pop-up book, and whenever you turn a page, an digital or other information is actually presented on a physical site. And this, for example, has been an installation done by the Ars Electronica Future Lab when we did a project about the world in 100 years. And when we were reimagining the future via the past and via images and projects and information that we actually collected. And you had a book, and whenever you turn the page, then on this screen, digital information has been generated via the physical book. The book you cannot see, but you can see maybe this in the light situation on the very beginning of this table. And there is this book, and whenever you turn the page, then the table is actually offering all you this digital information. So what is here of importance for us was also how we can actually work with these archives. Yeah, there's this massive information that a lot of artists actually have been already contributing. A lot of people related to Ars Electronica have worked with it. A lot of researchers are constantly working on this documentation. And there's also the question how we make it available, how we make it accessible. And you can imagine making this information accessible is one thing, but it could also be super boring. So how to imagine different interfaces, how to imagine different narration formats in order to tell the stories that artists actually were already telling in the past, how to contextualize them new, and how to bring it again into the forefront, because I work at the university and I see how important it is to speak about the past of media art, of digital art, and there is already the history that not a lot of people actually know or actually highlight, and I think the value of these archives is so of tremendous importance, and this is what we want to contribute at Ars Electronica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manuela and Christina. Now we are going to see Morgane Stricot talking about ZKM strategies.
Yes. So I'm Morgane, like said, I'm the digital art conservator at ZKM. I'm taking care with my colleagues of maintaining the whole collection of media and digital artworks of the collection so that the public can see them now and in the future. Today, I will present our experience in building and maintaining an exhibition of over 500 items, showing the diversity of media and digital art. This exhibition includes photography, graphics, painting, sculpture, as well as computer-based artworks, film, holography, kinetic art, pop art, sound art, visual poetry, and video art. So first, I will just show you a video of the exhibition.
The ZKM Collection Exhibition, Writing the History of the Future, focuses on the major themes that the ZKM has worked on over the past 30 years. The changes in art and society in the age of digitization. Since photography became a part of people's everyday lives, anyone can capture his or her individual view of the world. In the 1960s, the activists of video art pushed this process further. With video technology, which had suddenly become available, they showed worlds that the television and film industry had not shown until then. To this day, their aesthetic still influences our visual culture. In the 1950s, computer technology began to take over. Artists utilized algorithms and automatization in their artistic processes of creation. The new devices triggered similar discussions as we are witnessing today on the subject of artificial intelligence. Electronic media also changed the way sounds are generated and perceived. In the 20th century, previously unwelcome sounds and noise developed into a medium of the visual arts, sound art. Open works have been produced since the 1960s. These artworks invite visitors not only to observe, but to take action themselves. Art became participative, interactive, and performative. Art was no longer created exclusively by artists, but also by devices and active participants. With over 500 exhibits displayed in an area of more than 6,000 square meters, this exhibition is the first to present the diversity of the arts in a period of changing media. Especially remarkable is the wide range of genres of the selected works. This presentation of the collection is a tour through an era of rapid technological transformation in information and communication technology. In this period, art and culture were democratized in a completely new way. The exhibition demonstrates how technical devices have fundamentally changed the relationship to works of art, both in regard to their production as well as their reception. Artists react to changing media and anticipate developments that years later will be taken for granted by society at large. They write the history of the future.
So the effort to produce such an exhibition and actually maintain it for the duration of the exhibition is very high for media and digital artworks. I like to call our team the Mechanical Turk in reference to this fake chess-playing automate constructed in the late 18th century. It was known, as a very elaborate chess automaton, and actually the machine was able to play chess against a human with a lot of skills. And in fact, this automaton was hiding a human inside who operates the machine. And I thought it's a good comparison for what the ZKM team is. Our job is to make the visitors think that the artworks operate smoothly and beautifully on their own. And actually, there is a team of more than 20 persons that is taking care of maintaining these artworks on a daily basis, but also trying to anticipate on future problems that could prevent those artworks to be exhibited in the future. The functionality of all the media and digital artworks needed first to be checked prior exhibition with test setups. Many works have been repaired or even moved to new formats. And during the exhibition, the works must be continuously checked and maintained, especially due to the interactivity of those artworks and their high fragility. The work are subjected to heavy loads on a daily basis. Luckily, the ZKM is a center of expertise for the conservation and restoration of media and digital artworks. So the success of preservation efforts depends on the availability of free things, diverse expertise, experience, and spare materials. You can see on the picture how many shelves we have. So indeed, for the conservation, restoration, and presentation of digital artworks, we are following a cross-disciplinary, cross-department model, which is the most effective model for a museum as the ZKM with such expanded collection. So we are conservators, computer scientists, electrical engineers, technicians, art historians from 2 different departments. So the department Wissen, Collection Archives and Research, and the department Museum and Exhibition Technical Services. Altogether, we are gathering exceptional skills in preserving old systems, and we are committed to show the public as long as possible how artists use technology at different time periods, and working in collaboration also with the artists. We are looking for a solution to exhibit this artwork in the future in this so quickly changing environment. So during the last years, so 2 years, the focus of the restoration activity of the ZKM was on the preparation of and then the maintenance of the collection exhibition, writing the history of the future. It's a full-time job, no rest. So because for the first time in a long time, we had, as conservators and technicians, the opportunity to take the masterpieces of the ZKM collection out of storage, to repair and to document them, and also to develop long-term conservation strategies for them. Because unlike paintings or sculptures, for media and digital art, storage does not spare them or protect them, but rather threaten them. In media or digital artwork that is in storage is a dying artwork, because they exist only in their installed form. They must be displayed to be preserved. And only when the installation are in operation can possible damage, for example, be immediately detected and repaired. A computer or electrical system that remains off for an extended period of time sometimes cannot be resurrected. So for this exhibition alone, approximately 30 electronic and computer-based installations were reviewed and restored. Sorry. So this exhibition is a real chance for ZKM visitors and researchers to see early digital and media artworks in their legacy hardware and software environments, interactive Laserdisc installation, early virtual reality, generative art. At the ZKM, we preserve and display the artworks with their historical materials for research purposes. So it implies to keep as long as possible. We know that forever is impossible. So as long as possible, the artworks within their historical software and hardware components. So not necessarily with the very components acquired along with the artwork. It can be the same model, or at least from the same period, compatible then with the initial system. That way, we do not have to make major changes, for example, of the software environment or peripherals, and we avoid like this issues of incompatibilities or alterations of the artwork behavior and outputs. Some visitors will also certainly notice that we have also had to technically update some of the artworks to today's standards, especially the network or internet-based artworks. This is due, for example, to the fact that access to search engines has changed. So in those cases, we are working in collaboration with the artists, and we are looking for a long-term solution to adapt the artwork to the fast-moving internet. In order to preserve those work for posterity, the artist and the ZKM have to think about new ways of preserving them. It could be said that we have a really strong materialist approach at ZKM. And as a matter of fact, this situation is putting us in difficult situations sometimes. But this historical curiosity is really motivated by the need to preserve not only artworks, but also knowledge. Our approach is a unique chance for ZKM workers and researchers to experience the artwork's conception and learn more about the artist's techniques and methods to explore and sometimes hijack certain technologies' prior purposes. Since these artworks are repaired, or partially or completely rebuilt with spare parts, the tacit practical user knowledge is passed on from one generation to another. This exhibition will last 3 years, maybe a bit more with the COVID situation. And with this will give the conservator and technicians the opportunity to continue the restoration process of the collection and gradually install in the exhibition the recently restored artworks. Since the opening of this exhibition, the ZKM conservators have given several tours of the exhibition so that the visitors can learn more about this hidden discipline, which is digital and media art conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgane. I'm happy to welcome Oliver Grau and Wendy now. And we proceed. Yeah.
You cannot share it because until another participant gives it a screen free.
Can you?
Okay.
I think now you can. Thank you.
Yeah, hi-fi community, a warm welcome wherever you are on the planet. Happy to speak again. Technically from Brazil, and glad that I come next January in person to Sao Paulo for the CA World Conf, where we talk about digital imagery. And thank you so much to FILE to invite me and to Rejane to set this meeting up and to all the other colleagues from FILE. Yeah, so the Corona pandemic has unmistakably shown how closely interconnected the world has become through globalization, economically, technologically, and more culturally. life is often thematized by complex digital imagery. We discover what we may call now a political iconography of the 21st century, artworks dealing with mega topics like image revolution, climate, finance virtualization, or surveillance, compared to art media of earlier centuries, painting and sculpture, for example. Digital art, perhaps interactive, database-based, and connected to the World Wide Web, has a complex potential for expression that is capable of addressing the great challenges of our time. Although digital art deals with many of the big questions of the present, it is almost, as we all know, only shown in temporary exhibitions, not often enough in museums, and not systematically collected, preserved, and researched like all other traditional art forms. So media art plays a key role in the reflection on our information societies, as we can show empirically at the Archive of Digital Art. So classics of digital art, such as the virtual biotope Osmose by Charlotte Davies, created more than 25 years ago on Silicon Graphics machines, shown worldwide and discussed in more than 200 publications, a citation record for an artwork, but you find it in no museum collection. On climate change, the Archive of Digital Arts highlights key works here, Corby and Bailey's the Southern Ocean Studies from 2009, that show how climate models can be experienced both as vehicles for communicating climate change and as cultural phenomena of their own significance. Surveillance, a key challenge in our democracies, was the subject of numerous artists such as Seiko Mikami, here her robotic installation Desire of Codes from 2011, created even before Edward Snowden's world-shattering revelations became public. And over the last 5 decades, digital art has evolved. It can take, as we know, highly disparate forms and includes genres such as genetic, glitch, interactive installations, net art, AI, robotics, and virtual reality art. However, this art is significantly being lost due to rapid technological change. But also the documentation of digital art was lacking strong support in the past, as expressed in the International Liverpool Declaration, signed by more than 450 scholars and museum heads from 40 countries. There's urgent need to move towards a stable international platform of interoperable archives. The importance for digitization of cultural heritage is written into many national strategy documents, with corresponding funding being set aside for new infrastructures and preservation strategies. However, when these new strategies do not include digital arts, our societies will continue to be almost completely cut off from reflecting on issues of our time through their art. But this happens rather unintentionally, as a kind of a systemic failure. Indeed, it is no exaggeration to state that we continue to be threatened with a significant loss of this critical art form, and the debate engages in both in the archives of art history and in the future scholarship. And a number of recommendations, what can be done now, you can also find in our newly published book with leading experts from the field. Nevertheless, case studies for the preservation and documentation of digital art, as we know, are many. European Union research projects, museum research, for example, by Tate, Whitney, Guggenheim, SF MoMA, ZKM, decades of fundamental research across the globe, our Center for Image Science with its Erasmus Joint Master of Excellence in Media Arts, Cultures, research in France, Australia, Brazil, Canada, and many more. So another initiative would have to bring together the art technological genres and their major works with the conservation studies that have been carried out over the past decade in an information pool, helping to prepare a concerted collection policy for museums. Much of the conservation research listed here has already been done in hundreds of individual studies, but we and all initiatives need a systemic overview, a preparation for the connected aim to create a museum network collaborating and being informed by documentation archives of digital art. For that, we need the support of those politically responsible. As research-oriented documentation, the Archive of Digital Art, ADA, exists since the year 2000, growing into perhaps the most complex designed resource available online, a platform for scientific information and social communication. Hundreds of leading media artists are represented by several thousand documents with more than 3,500 articles and a survey of more than 1,500 institutions. There are also more than 150 scholars and media art historians involved in making ADA a collective project. And this is one of our main goals, to bring really the community into the archive itself. ADA is not subjective, but research-driven and democratic, since every artist with at least 5 artworks and every scholar with at least 5 publications is automatically qualified to be a member or contributor. The system offers a tool for artists and specialists to individually upload information about works and inventions. And over the years, some 5,000 artists were evaluated, of which more than 500, at this point, something like 700, fulfilled the criteria, resulting in the documentation of many of the most relevant artists across all continents. And now, ADA received, together with the Art University Linz and the University for Applied Arts in Vienna, a 1.2 million euro grant to develop ADA into a research and, this is most important, a cost-free teaching school for all art schools and as a key information resource for galleries and museums. Therefore, we would like to invite all of you artists, scholars, and representatives from institutions to become a contributor, create your profile, and upload information on works, literature, and exhibitions. So we document, as you see here, as well, interfaces and screens or displays and other artistic inventions, soft and hardware configurations, keywords, and high-res visuals to allow internationally the next generation of artists to learn through access to the best information, to give scholars, and this idea, the hope that we have the best information, but you never get the best. I mean, it's always a utopia, to give scholars the research resource they need, and museums, if they want to start a collection, the essential information. So, thesaurus keywords, navigable as hierarchical, alphabetical, and as cloud, stimulate users to bridge the traditional artworks and the media art of ADA, providing complex image resources for a richer analysis of media art. And keywording is bridge building. Important innovations such as interface or genetic art were carefully selected from hundreds of publications and festivals like Ars Electronica and IZEA, along with keywords, for example, from the Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus and the Warburg Index that play a role in traditional art history, such as body or perspective, with a bridge building function. For this bridging thesaurus, new keywords are empirically selected to achieve a comprehensive yet overseeable overview of the knowledge domain of media art. This vocabulary is limited to around 400 terms. It's growing and then shrinking again a little bit. But the idea is to overcome the so-called ghetto situation of digital arts by connecting it with historically established terms and allow artists and scholars themselves to choose the keywording. In relation to other vocabularies, ADA keywords have a unique hierarchical scheme based on a triad of aesthetics, subject, and technology. This top-down distinction of categories allows for the contextual specification of vocabulary as well as for the conceptual analysis of these levels by users. Aesthetics ranges from phenomenological observations such as immaterial to ontological qualities such as site-specific and object-oriented. Subject, the subject category encompasses iconographic terms established in art history and media art histories in subcategories like body and human, magic and fantastic, technology and innovation, power and politics, psychology and emotion. And we start empirical research too, as you see here, Jeffrey Shaw, again, Jeffrey Shaw, related artworks to immersion and panorama visualized by Renato Souza. Additionally, Ada's Lightbox is both scholarly and social, promoting comparative analysis of media artworks. This tool permits community members to assemble individual arrangements of their research. So the collective archive of digital arts includes many digital art installations, and it is important to contextualize them with media art histories, for example, the history of immersion, but we also have the histories of artificial life, phantasmagoric imagery, automata, etc. There are hundreds of traditions, and through comparison, we might better understand what is really new in digital art. So we may think about the question, what can networked archives actually mean, and how could we make steps towards such an alliance? As we know, there were and are many archives, mostly documenting digital arts around the world, often with limited or precarious funding. There are festival archives like Ars Electronica, conference archives like ASIA, or mediaarthistories.org, and generally scholarly scientific archives like Ada, all with different purposes and strengths. Some archives have collaborated in the past, but most are unique. The natural sciences, however, provide good models how we may work together internationally. For example, in astronomy, and thanks to Roger Molina for pointing this out, we have since years the virtual observatory, where researchers around the globe share and work with combined celestial data. Basically, the participating nations share the costs of the infrastructure enabling long-time research. For the humanities, the Liverpool Declaration makes a plea for something similar. During the last ICEA in Montreal, Ada, the ICEA archive, Ars Electronica, and recently I had a chance to talk to Peter Weibel, ZKM, we start to discuss how we can make the next step towards a more permanent international structure for information and research. Perhaps this will be solved through a metadata structure, a number of APIs or Ada and other main archives developing into a hub, where also small and new archives can join or use the archive software for free. Generally, it would be fantastic if also in this way we would gain access to remote documentation of the past, say Russian video art from the Cold War, global art from around the world, private collections of pioneers like Frida Nake, Itsushi Sakane, Jason Reichardt, and many others. A network of archives promoting cross-referencing and deep research. But let's step shortly into the perspective of archive's sister institution, the museum. Today, the worldwide museum community is more than 55,000 institutions strong. The US has more than 17,000 alone, Germany and Japan are around 6,000, and so forth. This infrastructure, in all its diversity and history, is such a mighty monolith that rapid change is difficult to imagine, but the digital age enters with force, bringing its own digital-born arts and cultures, which have their own history. Digital arts and cultures play a role in, as we know, about 200 biennials around the world and in more than 100 specialized festivals. However, digital art is not collected systematically in a concerted strategy by museums, because the basic structures of the 240-year-old institution date back to a time when different artistic media prevailed. That is why we as citizens are facing a massive problem in terms of democratic discourse via contemporary art. The immense developments in digital-born media art have been growing exponentially for decades now. Consequently, this requires that among the thousands of existing museums for traditional art media, a significant percentage of museums and archives must be dedicated to fulfill their fundamental functions to collect, preserve, explore, mediate, and taxonomize the digital cultures of the last decades. In Europe, where most museums are financed by taxes, and I don't know how the situation is in Brazil, I think it's probably the same partly, they cannot fulfill their official tasks to preserve late 20th century and early 21st century digital creative culture due to its overwhelming complexity. What is needed is an appropriate structure to protect at least the usual 1 to 6% of present media art production, the best works, To achieve this, we need a concerted policy of collection and preservation on a much larger scale, appropriate to serve the digital culture of the 21st century. Comparing the worldwide budget for preservation of traditional art with electronic art, we understand how inadequate the support is, statistically almost immeasurable. A systematic preservation requires the cooperation of museums and libraries into specifically funded expertise networks. To achieve this, we need a concerted policy of collaboration and preservation on a much larger scale. One strategy to enable the museum to fulfill its duties in our network democratic societies would be the establishment of a concerted museum network of expertise and preservation. But how can museums and archives collect and preserve digital culture, and which role do online archives play towards that goal? A concerted collection support structure would be located above the level of a single museum and would require the development or a network to overcome single institutional limitations to protect 21st century art, endangered by a lack of personal, budgetary, and technical restraints. A regional, nationwide, or international network of expertise could help to preserve digital art with the systematic help of main strategies developed in case studies, like emulation, recreation, and interpretation. But it depends on the will of those who are responsible for cultural policies. Federal structures in Germany, for example, could help through a practice of shared responsibilities. So if only 5% from Germany's 700 art museums would participate in a cross-federal framework, Bavaria, Munich, for example, could say with 5 museums be responsible for the preservation of interactive installations, and then offer this expertise to all other network members. Saxony and Dresden could take responsibility for net art, Brandenburg, Berlin for robotic art, and so forth. This alliance could be informed in Germany by ZKM, in Austria by the ADA network, in Ars Electronica, in Switzerland by HEC, and so forth. In this model, a museum in Frankfurt or another city, if it wants to buy an interactive installation, it can rely on the expertise of the Bavarian museums. Conversely, the Bavarian museums could count on the museums of the network responsible for net art. The preservation service could produce start-up companies as well and offer a corresponding service to collectors of digital art, thus helping this art to make a breakthrough in private collections. The time has come to start those initiatives. Right before the COVID outbreak, a meeting took place in Germany's National Library in Frankfurt with stakeholders, including the Ministry of Culture and Media, which has now recognized the need. The German counterpart of the New York Times, the FAZ, proposed an initiative to preserve digital art similar to the initiative to preserve German film heritage, which was recently launched with a startup funding of 11 million euro. This would help to protect not all, but the most important digital artworks and bring them into public discourse. This is a big task, as evidently, but just one challenge in the wide range of digital strategies for transforming institutions dedicated to cultural heritage. Archives are a fundamental aspect in digital cultural heritage, research, and education. The faster the essential modifications can be carried out, the smaller the gap in the cultural memory in the 21st century. Thank you very much. That's it.
Wow, Oliver. I love the interplanetary idea where we all together could make a difference. And certainly with Corina, like you said at the very beginning, that we can foresee something like that right now, right? It's a different situation. We are working globally, and what you're proposing to me makes all the sense, because we see like ZKM doing one kind of effort, right? Building up a lab, a live lab. And I have many questions for Morgane here from our listeners, because they want to know how is it possible? How do you invite people to go in the tours? And of course, that becomes almost a live school, right? Open lab. I remember when I went to ZKM, that caught my attention because we were setting up the work in the middle of the museum, and people were passing by and they could see how the artists would work in their pieces. And to me, that became a very important lesson, because I understood that one way of making these pieces alive is also showing not only the magic, but showing the science behind. And I know ZKM does that often and very careful. At the same time, I mean, we see, so I'll have a question for everybody soon, but I was so moved, and I'm here and listening to all these questions here addressed to all of you. And one thing is for sure, what could we do to make what Oliver is foreseeing? How can we all help it to happen? How could the artists, for example, I know Ada, to me, it's very clear, is a very big and open access to all artists. And Oliver invited everybody that's listening to participate. And this is really an amazing way of starting to build up a memory. And that would feed the system and by us, by just any person on the planet could do that, right? Any artist that has 5 works, I guess, right, Oliver? I think we need to be, to have published or exhibited at least 5 pieces in order to enroll other, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it's great for the people to know. I mean, a very young artist can get ready and study there, yes, because it's almost a library, but at the same time, you can also enroll yourself. And,
yeah, so this may be a kind of a global approach. So we are not festival based or not connected with some institutions. Everybody who has 5 exhibitions and or 5 articles as a scholar can participate. And we have also a board where some newcomer with a fabulous new interface also where they also can be recommended and part of. But it's generally it's a very democratic gatekeeping system. So not everybody can be part of it, but then those who have made some impact in the field and can, yeah.
I also would like to invite Paula Pericinotto, because she's with us, and maybe it would be nice to have her in this discussion. But the way I see, like, hi Paula, welcome. No microphone.
Sorry, no, it's so many questions that we have in the chat that I really would like to try to answer some of them, you know. And so I will leave this discussion and then we talk later afterwards, okay?
Okay, so let's start then with Manuela and Chris, because one of the things is about how the effort to archive things that are in constant moving, like you know that we know that digital art is evolving all the time. Even when you keep it inside of your closet, it's evolving. So I don't know if you could, Chris, this is a Tiago Rebouças question. He wants to know how, if you have any example, would be nice, I think, because I have also other questions that are related to that idea. Microphone, please. Your microphone is not working, Chris. Try now. Still no. You want me to Yeah, maybe Manuela, you wanna go ahead sometime.
Christina, maybe last try.
Yeah, is it
Yeah.
now working? Okay, I
Yes.
just put it on and off. Okay. What do you mean exactly with changing content?
Yeah, because there are two questions here. One is about the evolving, the constant evolution of the technology and the works, and how can we, how do you keep it? What is the effort? How do you do that? And then I have another question also that's related to that, that says, do this kind of technological art that cannot be reproduced with new technologies is doomed to become a text, a documentation, description? So that, like Manuela had to, I think many of those questions are related to the idea that Manuela said. We want to keep it as close as possible to restage the piece. What are the strategies? Do you have any example that you could give us where the effort to like come up with something that's only a documentation and turn it into the piece again? It's like a travel machine, right? You can experience, you can participate of this piece again through documentation. So you have to have a kind of documentation. That's something that we all need to figure, right? We need to consider that one thing is like having the documentation, and the other is having the work and feeling it. And so I think all the questions here, they are related to the idea of how do you do it? How do you transform something that's alive, that reacts to the presence of the people and all this into a documentation, then afterwards it becomes something alive again, if you have an example.
Yeah, but basically we try to keep as much documents as possible in the archive around a piece. So to see it from different perspectives and sides, and for the process of bringing it to a real piece again, it needs, of course, people like Morgane that puts this then together again to a piece. So that's not something we are doing in the Ars Electronica archive. We try to save the information, that it don't get lost, and to try to make this as various as possible. So like the example I gave, documentation, a video where Jeffrey Shaw is himself explaining the piece. So there is a lot of information stored in what he says about the piece. And he also shows it while he is talking about it. So you get a lot of information from these interviews with artists or these videos that shows the pieces in action. And also, for example, when it's coming from the artists sometimes submit a lot of background information about pieces. That's nothing that comes to the public archive, but it's stored in this database. And they also submit sketches and more background information about projects. Is this answering basically a bit?
Maybe I have also a good example, because when we celebrated 40 years of Ars Electronica, for example, one of the first network projects that took place at Ars Electronica, for example, has been The World in 24 Hours by Adrian X. And this was one of the great, this was a project in 1982 that was traveling around the world within 24 hours, connecting different places in the world. And there is already documentation about this piece when it took place. But when we celebrated 40 years of Ars Electronica, And unfortunately, Robert Adrian X is not with us anymore, but we had Roy Ascott, we had a lot of artists, and we had Josephine Bosma as a theorist who is also researching especially on this work. And we brought all this information, for example, about this work together with Elisabeth Zimmermann and Heidi Grundmann and so on. So people who are really very near to Robert Adrian X. So I think it's not that you have to imagine, okay, you click on the world in 24 hours and then you have actually all the information that you get, because it's actually a living archive. So it's an archive that constantly contributes to works that existed and is additionally putting all this research effort that just recently took place also together, yeah, and is now coming in. So I think this is a nice example how a work from 1982 is actually also contextualized now actually in, when did you celebrate? In 2019, actually at Ars Electronica. So I think this is also one of the very special achievements that, because of this long history of Ars Electronica and the possibility of collecting all this information already since quite a long time. And in addition, then we have young researchers and students working with it, contextualizing it new, bringing it into new context, restaging it, or actually referring to it, even doing in other works, but referring to it. And also this is then again contributing, because maybe this gives another possibility to see the work in a new form. Yeah, so maybe this is a good example how a work that is actually a networked sculpture, as he mentioned it. So a work that is actually only existing via telephone lines and via the digital realms, and we only have artifacts actually now from the piece. So it's not a hardware that is there. It's not a piece of software that we cannot run anymore. It's actually a project that needs to be recontextualized, documented, thought about, written about, and so on. And now it's existing even since quite a long time.
I noticed that the questions here, people are very anxious to know how do they save what they are doing, and of course, right? So I would have a question for all of you that I believe would answer partly of the questions we are receiving. And this is, if you need to tell an artist what to do, how can we get prepared? I mean, how can we as artists already think about the future? How can we foresee the way you will deal with what the work we are doing? So I know Oliver is very open. And like I said, I think that answers many of the questions is to be in ADA, to be represented, you have to be an artist with 5 pieces. That's what it is, right? Then after that, what should we do to cooperate with you? Anyone?
I don't know if it's an answer to your question, but as like all art, also the digital art of our time deals in the end with human beings and our connection to the world, and in this case and our period now, especially the amalgamation with technology, but then also digital art has this great opportunity to visualize those complex big issues our time deals with, like climate and surveillance and so on. I can hardly think of a painting representing the very complex surveillance of the NSA, but their digital artworks can do that. And I would encourage artists always to be still courageous and do go to the limits, push the technology due to their artistic will. So where they go to the places where it's adventurous, and it is the job of the political responsible and also of us to push them that we create a system where those artists who go to the boundaries of today, where those artworks will be also preserved so that they can be shown also in the future. But it is a very big challenge to set up this infrastructure or to modernize our cultural infrastructure towards a situation where this artistic will in the end will be represented.
If I may, yeah. I will never limit artists to do whatever they want. Like I'm not coming during the creation process, but what I can ask the artists when we are acquiring their artworks is to work with us and to help us with all they can give us. I have boxes of archives, I have source code, I'm asking them also for availability. Like for us, like the work of Ars Electronica is completely like complementary with what we are doing. Is I'm asking, like, we need at least free time of installing the artwork, like free setups, to start understanding the whole complexity of an artwork and be able to document it as much as we can, so we can make a setup without the artist. Because usually the 2-3 first time we are asking the artist to come and to help us to do the installation. So it takes time to do documentation. It takes, I would say 20 years, 10 to 20 years, because the experience has to, like the experience of making, of installing has to, we just need time. It cannot be just in one day at the acquisition that we gather all the material. Sometime after 3 setups, we understand something of the artwork that we didn't understood at the first time. So yeah, usually we ask the artists for help. I know it's horrible because we are preventing them to create new things by asking always to be there with us, but I think this is the only way right now.
Be generous with documentation, right? I think this is clear. We need to be open and generous. Sometimes we are too connected to the work, and not, so we want to, when I think about you guys, I think that I need to be that, and my work in your hands, and you need to understand me. I always make that exercise, because that's the only way that will survive me or time, right? Manuela, please.
Yeah, I just want to highlight here that on the one hand, I mean, there is artists, well-known artists, where there are structures how to archive and so on. So, but I also want to speak about very young artists here, because I think it's so important that young artists understand how the value of documenting, the value of constantly making screenshots, the value of speaking about the visual quality, the visual impact that they actually want to generate with their works, but also the concept behind. So try to describe it with their own words, but even letting others describe what they are doing, because this is also sometimes what I give a hint to my students, say, well, let others explain actually what you're doing. Maybe they find better words, because maybe you are too much into the work. So I think it's very, very important not only to speak about elaborated or well-known artists. I think it's very important that young artists understand to document the steps that they think that are interesting and important, and to keep this information and to find a way to archive it already on their own, and to, because it also helps maybe to understand their artistic process behind. And the artistic process has many steps, and we all know, especially in the digital world, one work can have different ways how to present it, how to install it. So it's super important to keep trace about all these different steps, and this is quite difficult.
Yeah. I know Paula has 2 questions she wants to address you.
Hi. Actually, the 2 questions come from the audience, but I think it goes a little bit in another direction, but I think it's important because also bring us to the a more now they challenge. So one question is that if the database showed by Christina is an open source, proprietary, or tailored made, and if it's open source is a matter for you in the Ars Electronica. And the other question, which I think can be maybe put together, is if you have thought of creating work inventories using the blockchain technology.
For our database, it was built before I joined the team, so I cannot tell you that detailed, but I know that it was made with open source software at the beginning. And maybe what's important here to say, it's something that needs permanent effort. So currently it's a bit difficult on our side with the database. So when you start an archive, try to build something that you know that you will have people also in 5 or 10 years that will support you with this. Or if it's open source, that you still have access to everything, and it's not over when you build it the first time. You will have to work continually on it and update it.
Yes, maybe Oliver also with Ada, since it's like 20 years already there, have you changed the technology during this period? I mean, from now with this new budget, would you go further in a more deep new technology such as blockchain or something like this?
Blockchain, actually, I don't know. So as a database or a documentation, it's more what I know for artworks, that you make them artworks unique. So our technology has changed over the years. It was open source from the beginning, like Postgres, and then we use since a few years Typo 3. And actually, if out there is some programmer who would like to join our team, please send us a personnel message. So we at the moment at this have one of these moments where we need to make a strategic decision if we stick with our Typo 3 or if we move to WordPress or to some other technology, and so we have to evaluate the pros and cons, and so we as archives have the same preservation problem like the artists in the end. So we have these, although they're open source, but it's still a question to have an updated database, but if you update too much, then you may lose some of the complexity of your archive, and so yeah, it's a big endless discussion. So our team is discussing since half a year what we should do.
Oliver, you should use MediaWiki. All the museums are turning to MediaWiki now, thanks to Rhizome, actually. Rhizome has built his database like this, and now we have SF MoMA, Tate, EC, ZKM, and I think a lot of others are gonna join. And like this, we are all speaking the same language, which is Wikidata or Wikibase, and we all can share our databases super easily. It's open source, it's easy. So yeah, please join the team.
Yeah, that's a good tip, Morgane.
So Morgane, I think that drives us to the last question, and I thought about going to that direction and asking you, how could you make Oliver's dream, because he's a pioneer, he's seeing ahead, so how can we make it a planetary institution? How can we put our efforts? How can we work together So I think technology is one of the things, for sure. And if you could, I'll give little tips. That would be nice for us to finish this table today.
Okay. Actually, all museums that are collecting digital art are more or less connected. We know each other's. We talk to each other a lot. And actually, thanks to the project from Tate, Pericles, we had this community of practice, and we could talk regularly and actually exchange ideas, like technical solutions. And this was really great. And at the end of the European project, it stopped, but we all kept in mind that we could just, meet once a month and talk about the current issues we have, and just know if someone else in the world had this issue. And this is something also ZKM is committed to do. Like when we are doing a project, because each artwork is so different, we cannot do guidelines, but we can give examples of what we are doing. And we want to publish everything and make maybe a wiki. It's the easiest way to share every document, everything we have. And we wanted also to share it on Reddit, like open platform like this. It's not touching only institutions, but also everywhere, like every person's, programmers, for example, or the engineers, because we need all those disciplines. We need this collaboration between all those fields of expertise. And if we just stay between each other's from museum to museum, it's not gonna work, I think, in long term. We have to work with other fields of expertise. And
so one thing is everybody working together, different fields, and meeting of them, right? Yeah. That's what you're doing. Manuela and Christine, 1 minute. Sorry, I have to do it like that.
Yeah, so I just want to mention here also this kind of openness that is super important for Ars Electronica Archive. But on the other hand, there are different layers. So we also have to, especially sometimes we have works that are contributed to the pre, and sometimes the artists don't want that everything is public and that everything has an access. So somehow we understand ourselves as agents for them, so that not everything is immediately public, but more to, say, well, is this something that has to go to the public surface, for example, of our archive, or that is actually within the archive that is not accessible public? Yeah, and I think this is a general discussion, but this is super important. So what is actually also for artists important to share, but what also has to be kept on another level. And I think this is also something that we have to develop constantly with the artists. And more artists are into this concept of sharing, but we also have to respect those who sometimes also see problems. So, and I think this is why we understand ourselves as agents. And this is also what I want to highlight here.
Thank you. Chris? Do you want to say anything?
Basically, it was really important what Manu said. A lot of, or it gets more that the persons also say, I don't want to show this, or they want to show exactly only this picture. So it's a bit, difficult sometimes. And meeting with others sounds great.
Okay, and I think so too. So we have meetings, we have sharing, we have generosity. And Oliver, can you close?
I don't know if I can. I'd like to open more.
Great. Yes.
Yeah. No. But I mean, of course, I know the colleagues, our wonderful colleagues here. But we should be very aware that we don't get too much into a Eurocentric view or to I don't know. So we should be really open for countries from all continents. And for smaller archives and archives from regions where we are simply not aware of, we cannot know everything, and so we should have really develop a culture of this openness, and then influence us, create cross influences. I have to credit really Roger Molina. He had this idea technologically wise or science politics wise with this virtual observatory, where different nations pay in a certain amount of money permanently, and which allow them to create this international structure. We just got another grant, and after the 4 years, what shall we do then? And so we need this permanent structure, and especially we also need to make the connection with the museums, that the museums can, which often have only one person or so as a curator. I'm not talking about CKM, I'm talking about regular museums, and they need to build larger networks, which also need some special funding. And then the connection between the archives and the museums to preserve, to show the artworks, and to bring them in public discourse, so that the taxpayer has a chance to reflect on the big issues of our time through its art. Then we come to a better situation.
Wonderful. Paula, do you want to say anything?
Well, actually, I just want to thank you all so much. You know, it was great. And people in the chat, Oliver, you have some offers in the chat already for programmers. So I think it's great. And thank you all. It's such a, we are all very grateful for this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much for everybody, for the people that are watching us. All these videos are going to be available, and Paula and FILE team are doing a very important document after. So I hope this is the beginning of a planetary action where we put ourselves together, meet always, right, Chris? A lot of meetings and sharing what we love the most, what is art, and how we can, through art, make life better and more fun, right? Thank you so much, all of you. I really love all of you, and I thank you all my life for being what you are.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Bye-bye.